Greetings, Ian from RTO here. Welcome to a very gloomy day here in Northampton. Someone's forgot to turn the lights on. It's dark and it's dingy. We're expecting rain and thunderstorms according to the weather, but there you go. So Friday is also live album ranking. Got a really good one today. We did a story on him not so long ago, so I wanted to do this one because this is a bigger part of his catalogue, and that's Gary Moore live. I've seen Gary Moore quite a lot. I've seen his rock shows, I've seen his blues shows, and it's very, very sadly missed. He was a terrific performer and guitar player. I always have memories of being down the front at NEC on the Wild Frontier tour and seeing him pull his wonderful faces playing the guitar. Unfortunately, that tour was not released as a live album, but it did come out on a VHS video, so look out for that in the future. So he's released 9 live albums. I've got them all, of course, because I am a huge Gary Moore fan. Some of them obviously came out after his death, but they're all good. So we'll get cracking because it's a busy day today. So coming in at number 9, we have an album that was released in 2014, and it's called Live at Bush Hall, and it was recorded in 2007 at Bush Hall. So it's Gary Moore on vocals and guitars as ever. On the bass we've got Pete Reeves, Brian Downey, ex-Thin Lizzy drummer, and keyboards Vic Martin. Now a lot of these tracks from this concert from his album that he was touring with at the time, Close As You Get. So the first 6 songs all come off Close As You Get. You got the brilliant The Devil Made Whiskey. Then we get the Chuck Berry cover 30 Days, which he does a great version of. Trouble at Home, I love that track, some great guitar there. Eyes Sight to the Blind, I Had a Dream, absolutely killer tracks. And then we go to Still Got the Blues album for a little bit of Too Tired. You're never too tired of Too Tired. Then we have a bit of blues improv, which is fantastic. Then we have Don't Believe a Word, which was from Johnny the Fox, and Gary did a version of it on Back on the Street. So what he does, he starts it off like the Back on the Streets version, that slow version, and all of a sudden it goes into the real rocker version. I do love that. Still got the blues, always brilliant, big crowd favourite, just like Walking by Myself. Great tracks from Still Got the Blues. Then we get The Blues Is All Right from After Hours, a 9-minute version of that. It's a lot of fun. And then we close with Sundown from Close As You Get. It is a killer blues album. It's just a great live album. This was very hard. I love all these live albums. Yeah, it's just so difficult to rank these. It is hard. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Even though it's at the bottom, it's still a cracking album. Number 8, we have an album that was released in 1986, but it was recorded in 1983, and it is called Rockin' Every Night, and it was recorded in Japan, in Tokyo. And appearing on this album is Gary Moore on vocals and guitars, John Sloman on lead vocals as well and backing vocals, Don Airy on the keyboards, Neil Murray on the bass, and Iain Pace on the drums. This one opens up with a track off Corridors of Power, Rockin' Every Night. Much better than the studio. It's got a bit more grit. I love it, but this version is even better. Then we get, again, from Corridors of Power, Wish Him Well, the free cover, and Gary does a great version of that. I do like that track. Then we get a great ballad off Corridors of Power, I Can Wait Until Tomorrow. Absolutely great track. One of my favourite tracks off that album. Then we go to Dirty Fingers for a little bit of Nuclear Attack, killer track from that album. And then we have a couple of tracks from the G-Force album that he made. And they do the White Knuckles instrumental, which is absolutely killer. Gary Moore shredding, etc. And that goes straight into Rockin' and Rollin', which is a brilliant track. I love that track. Some great guitar work there from Gary. Then we go to Back on the Streets for the title track, Back on the Streets. Really good crowd puller that one is. A great track. And the last track on here is a thing called Sunset. Now this is a song written by Don Airey, Cozy Powell and Gary Moore, and it's dedicated to Randy Rhoads. And the song actually first appeared on Cozy Powell's solo album Tilt, which is a great album. And he does a version of it here. It's wonderful. Absolutely killer track. I love the guitar work on this. Yeah, it's a good album. It's got some tracks from the early days. Great musicians on here. You can't get any better than Airy, Murray and Pace. Yeah, great backup. And John Solomon on vocals. I like playing this. It's the only criticism. It's very edited in places, but I still like listening to this. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, then coming in at number 7. Released in 2020, so not so long ago, and it's live from London, and it's recorded at the O2 Islington Academy in 2009. So the band on here is Gary Moore, Pete Reed, he's on the bass, Steve Dixon on the drums, and Vic Martin on the keys. Opens up from Still Got the Blues, Pretty Woman. Absolutely a brilliant track. Then this is sort of stuff taken from the Bad For You album, a couple of tracks from that. We've got Bad For You Baby, the title track, which is a great track. Down the Line, I love that. Some nice, great guitar riffs on that. Then from After Hours, the B.B. King track, Since I Met You Baby. Absolutely brilliant. Then he does a great version of John Mayall's Have You Heard, which is on the Close As You Get album. Absolutely brilliant. Then we have All Your Love, which appears on the CD version of Still Got the Blues. Brilliant. Mojo Boogie, I love that track. That's from Bad For You Baby. I Love You More Than You'll Ever Know. 11 minutes of wonderful blues and guitar playing. Then we get Too Tired from Still Got Your Blues. Still Got Your Blues itself. Walking By Myself. The Blues Is Alright. And we end up from Parisian Walkways, which is a killer track. A great album, another one of the albums released after Gary's death. It was great to hear another live album from the man, and I love this album as much as I love all the others. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7.6. Okay, number 6 is a really, probably one of the earliest recordings, live material of Gary I've got. It was released in 2000 in October, but it's actually recorded at the Marquee Club, and it's called Live, just Gary Moore Live, and it was recorded at 2 nights at the Marquee Club in 1980. So it's Gary Moore on guitar and backing vocals, Kenny Driscoll on the lead vocals, Don Airy on keyboards, and Andy Pyle bass, and the brilliant Tommy Aldridge on the drums. This opens up with a Back on the Streets, what a track to open the gig with. Then we go to Run to Your Mama from Dirty Fingers. Again, it sounds so different live. It sounds really heavy and loud live. Great track. Then we have a track from G-Force, Dancing. Again, sounds so better, much better live. She's Got You, another track from G-Force. One of my favourites on there, and I love the live version of that. Then we get an instrumental version of Parisian Walkways. Then we get You, another track from one of the poppier tracks from G-Force. Another great version of Dirty Fingers. And then we get Dallas Warhead, which is a great instrumental. It's just a jam thing. Goes on a little bit too long, but boy, is it a killer track. This is a nice little album, packing in the early days, but it's so good. It's raw, and the atmosphere at the marquee must have been electric. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 5. This is an album that was released in 2007. It's recorded at London Hippodrome, and it's called Blues for Jimi. And this performance, which is Gary Moore playing a selection of Jimi Hendrix classics. The concert was a part of the launch for the Jimi Hendrix Live at Montreux album, and the special guests on here are Billy Cox, of course, and Mitch Mitchell. So the rest of the guys on here is Gary Moore on lead vocals, Dave Bronze on the bass, Darren Mooney on drums, and then Billy Cox comes and plays guitar and vocals on tracks 9 to 11, and Mitch Mitchell, as ever, on the drums. Absolutely great. So the tracks they decided to do was Purple Haze, Manic Depression, Foxy Lady, which is absolutely killer on this. The Wind Cries Mary, I Don't Live Today. Then the little thing Gary Moore did called My Angel, beginning, and then Angel. Fire, Red House, which is killer. Gary plays that well, and it's great to have the rest of the Jimi Hendrix experience. All these tracks are now Gary, Billy, and Mitch. Stone Free is killer. Hey Joe, oh, brilliant version, and Voodoo Child. Killer live album, especially when you get the Billy and Mitch playing with Gary. Absolutely killer album. If you like Jimmy and you like Gary, you're going to love this. So I'll give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. Okay, coming in at number 4 is an album called Live at the Monsters of Rock. It was recorded in 2003 at the Sheffield Hallam Arena. It's more, this album is, although it's credited to Gary Moore, it's from that album. Remember, he did an album, a project called Scars. So this is basically Scars live, but it is credited to Gary Moore for some reason. So the band was Gary Moore, Cass Lewis, and Darren Mooney. So the first track on this is from Victims of the Future and their cover of the Yardbirds song Shape of Things. Absolute killer track. And we have another cover. We do a bit of Wishing Well from Free, from the Corridors of Power. Now the next 3 tracks from the album Scars, which I love. So we got Rectify, then this little guitar intro from Gary, and then it goes into Stand Up, and Just Can't Let Go. Now these tracks are killer on the album, but they're even better live. Absolutely killer. And that's from most modern Gary Moore concerts. You couldn't do it without doing a little bit of Walking by Myself. Absolutely killer. Bit of Don't Believe a Word, the slow and fast version. Then we get Out in the Fields from Run for Cover. Fantastic track. Then we end up with Parisian Walkways, a really good live album. I know there was more songs in this set, and it's a shame it wasn't a double, but it's a really, really good album. It was great to hear the Scars tracks, and it's nice that I've got a lot of tracks from all his career, which is fantastic. The only stuff I haven't got is Honest Injun. So I'm going to give that one an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay, then coming in at number 3, released in 1993, taken from the 1992 tour, Blues Alive. Gary Moore on guitar and vocals, Tommy Iyer on keyboards, Andy Pyle on bass guitar, Graham Walker on the drums, and then we get we've got Martin Drover on the trumpets, Frank Mead on saxophones and harmonicas, Nick Pentlow on tenor sax, Nick Payne on baritone saxophone, backing vocals, Candy McKenzie and Carol Thompson, and guest musician on Too Tired, Mr. Albert Collins. This opens up with A Cold Day in Hell from After Hours. Brilliant live. The horns it's great on the album. The horns just give it some. Then we have Walking by Myself, of course. Still Got the Blues. Story of the Blues from After Hours. Oh Pretty Woman from Still Got the Blues. Wonderful version of that. Separate Ways. And then Too Tired with Albert, absolute killer. Still Got the Blues, Since I Met You Baby. The Sky Is Crying, Elmore James number. Further On Up the Road, King of the Blues, Parisian Walkways, Jumping at Shadows. Some great blues numbers there. Great with him doing that little bit with Albert Collins. It's a fantastic blues album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.6. Okay, coming in at number 2. Now this is quite a sad one. This was proved to be Gary's last film performance, and it's live at Montreux in 2010. Recorded at the famous Montreux Jazz Festival. Was released in 2011. A lot of the songs come from the Fire Wild Frontier album, and some songs that were going to be featured on a new album that never got made, which is sad, but this is where they are. So the band, Gary Moore, lead vocals and rhythm guitars. Neil Carter's back with him on this, keyboards, guitars and backing vocals. Jonathan Noyce on bass, and Darren Mooney on drums. Now these are the tracks on here are killer. Opens up with Over the Hills and Far Away, and it's got the lot of the Celtic stuff which he did when I saw them on the tour, and this is still as good. I love that song. Then we stay with the Wild Frontier album with Thunder Rising. Absolutely killer. Then we have Military Man from Run for Cover, which is a Phil Lynott track that him and Phil sang on the Run for Cover. Absolutely killer track. Then we get a new track that's not on any album but this one. It's called Days of Heroes. It was a Celtic rock track. Go back to some of the stuff, the Thin Lizzy Celtic rock. Reminds me a little bits of Emerald and Black Rose all put in together. Shame we never got a studio version of this, because it's an absolutely killer track, and I love that track. Then we have another track that we didn't get anywhere else because of its Yeah, they didn't record it. Where Are You Now? It's a nice rock ballad from Gary. Great guitar solo on this. It just absolutely killer. Then we get So Far Away and Empty Rooms, which appeared both on Victims of the Future and Run for cover. Great track. Then we have a new track, Oh Wild One, another Celtic rock, probably my favourite of the new tracks on here. I think this would have been a fantastic track in the studio as well. Then we get Blood of Emeralds from After the War, one of the great Celtic rock tracks on that album. Brilliant version. And then Out in the Fields from Run for Cover. Then we do a little bit of blues. Still Got the Blues. I'm Walking by Myself and Still Got the Blues. Johnny Boy from Wild Frontier. And the gig ends with Parisian Walk Rhymes. I love this album because it's got some tracks, new tracks that sounded great. Some of the great rockers from that rock period he had, which was very successful. I do like playing this album a lot, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 1. An album released in 1984, and it's a double album. It was recorded between February and June of 1984, and it is We Want More. It's recorded all from in America, Detroit, in Japan, Tokyo, in Scotland, in Glasgow, and in England, London at the Hammersmith Odeon and the Ulster Hall in Belfast. So appearing on this, you've got Gary Moore on lead vocals, Neil Carter on keyboards and guitars, Craig Gruber on the bass, some of the drumming's done by Ian Pace, some's done by Bobby Chouinard as well, and Jimi Nail does some backing vocals. Okay then, so the opening track on here is the great track from Victims of the Future, Murder in the Skies, one of my favourite tracks by Gary Moore. Absolutely killer track. This is the tour that was the album that they were touring with. Then again from Victims of the Future, Shape of Things, another Yardbirds track, absolutely brilliant. That was, these two tracks were actually recorded in Detroit. Victims of the Future, brilliant, recorded in Detroit. Great drumming on here from Ian Pace, absolutely killer. Brilliant track. Then we have Cold Hearted, which is a great track off Corridors of Power, and it incorporates the End of the World solo as well. Then it goes into End of the World, absolutely killer track. That's recorded up in Glasgow. Then we have a little bit of Back on the Streets, and Back on the Streets, of course, killer track. Then we have probably the best version of So Far Away and Empty Rooms. Takes up the whole of side 3. Back in them days, when that's why it's a double album, I think. And side 4 starts off with Don't Take Me for a Loser, which is a great track off Corridors of Power. And it's even heavier than on the studio. And then we get Rockin' and Rollin' from G-Force, and this is where Jimi Nail, actor and musician extraordinaire, does the backing vocals on it. It's a brilliant version of it. Okay, all these tracks, it's not in any particular order, is it? It's not a run through, but the production on it is fantastic. You wouldn't know that this was a disjointed. It runs smoothly, and I don't care because it's probably got some of the greatest live recordings of these tracks. You know, this is the era of Gary Moore that I really love. From Back on the Streets up to Wild Frontier, to me, was a a great period for Gary, some great rockers. I love his blues stuff as well, but I love his rock stuff, and I saw him quite a few times when he did the rock stuff. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.5. So there we go, some Gary Moore live. Can't knock a bit of Gary Moore live. Okay, as I said, we've got a busy day today, so up next is a brand new album review, and it's from Mr. Neil Morse, and it's The Dreamer, Joseph, Part 1. So we're going to have a look at that, and then after that we've got a birthday top 10 to do as well, so a busy day here on Friday. So I will see you all soon. Bye for now.